Dawn brought Army explosives experts to the scene, and they quickly established that the blast came from a massive 15-pound charge of gelignite wired to go off when the interior light of the car went on. It wasn't until first light that the full impact of the blast became apparent. What was left was hardly recognizable as a car. Dozens of pieces of wreckage were scattered over an area of 100 yards. One policeman's hat was found 80 yards away in one direction, his watch 50 yards away in the other, and he was thrown 30 yards by the explosion. The car had been in the lane a few yards from the busy main road since Sunday. Army border patrols had passed it several times a day since then. Now the narrow lane which leads to the front here has been sealed off.
In 1971, a bomb damaged the BBC television and radio transmitter on Brocha Mountain. Repairs to the mast and building were carried out in the weeks that followed. On the 9th of February, 5 men were heading up the mountain when they drove into a tripwire attached to a landmine. The men were killed instantly. A journalist from the Impartial Reporter newspaper wrote, "Even the hard-bitten, much-travelled, war-scarred daily newspaper reporters and cameramen were tight-lipped and silent as they surveyed the havoc wrought by the early morning explosion and the sudden death." 2 of the men were BBC engineers Bill Thomas and Malcolm Henson. They'd picked up 3 workmen, John Eakins, George Beck and Harry Edgar, who travelled each day from Kilkeel and went the last few miles up the mountain together in the BBC Land Rover.
They all had their day's work to do. It wasn't that they had a choice. If they wanted to keep a family alive, if they wanted to earn money, they had to go out and do it. Unlike those who left that explosive device, they had a choice, but they chose to take life.
The killings on Brocha Mountain remain just some of the many unsolved murders of the Troubles.
There are people in the community, down next Brocha Mountain or wherever, who would have known or had some knowledge of who did this and chose to be silent. And that's a sad reflection of what goes on in our society here today.
This is the 3rd time in recent months that the IRA have used an RPG-7 rocket launcher in attacks on the security forces. In those earlier attacks, 1 policeman was killed and a soldier was maimed. It's now certainly the most sophisticated weapon at the IRA's disposal.
In the heart of a staunchly Republican border town, the Union flag mourns for 9 policemen and women killed by the Provisional IRA. They died as they spent a few moments at ease from the troubles in Newry Police Station's backyard canteen. The little wooden cabin was reduced to splinters. It had been crammed with officers taking their tea-time break and was hit directly, killing 9 of the 20 people inside. Some policemen just stood quietly amid the wreckage, numbed by the sudden loss of so many colleagues. The death toll could have been much worse. 5 shells missed their target. 1 landed in the street at the front of the station, which is surrounded by houses. Many homes were damaged, cars were wrecked, but amazingly, no one outside the police compound was injured.
The explosion happened around 12:20 in Harbour Drive in Kilkeel. The victim was 46-year-old Mr. Gordon Hanna, a father of 4 and a self-employed electrician and part-time captain in the UDR. He'd just driven away from his home in Harbour Road and had gone less than 50 yards when a bomb went off onto the driver's seat of his car. A man in the car behind is told how he rushed to help Mr. Hanna, who was still alive after the explosion. Neighbours also went to his aid until an ambulance arrived. However, he died on the way to hospital. It's thought the bomb had been left onto the car during the night. The RUC say they don't know how much explosive was used, but they say from the damage to Mr. Hanna's Volvo, there was little chance he could have survived. At this stage, it's thought the bomb was detonated by a mercury tilt switch, which would have been activated by the movement of the car. Captain Hanna is the 2nd member of the regiment to be killed in the past 2 weeks, and his death brings the total number of UDR men killed to 151.
Alan Johnston, the joiner, arrived for work just after 8. A gunman followed him into the Kilkeel joinery works and shot him 5 or 6 times in the head and chest. He died soon afterwards. The gunman ran to a waiting car, an Opel Kadett, and was driven off by an accomplice. The car was later abandoned at Abbey Park in another part of the town. 18 families there were moved from their homes while British Army experts checked out the vehicle. It had been stolen from a man held overnight at gunpoint. He was left tied up in his home near the scene of the killing. Reverend David McCarthy was Alan Johnston's minister.
I think that 3 times over these past number of months, personal threats have been made against him.
Today was only Alan Johnston's 2nd day back at the joinery works on the Greencastle Road. Previously, he'd been working elsewhere for the same company.
It seemed to me that he was fingered by someone locally. These professionals brought in from a distance to do a job. They must have their contacts in the local community. And that saddens me that there are folks in this community who could indeed set one of their friends, a member of the community, up for such a murder.
Kenny Graham was liked and admired by both communities in Kilkeel, who came out in thousands to honour him. As the cortege made its way from the Graham parents' home, it stopped outside the building firm where Kenny Graham had a mixed workforce of about 100 people. His elderly parents and his 2 young daughters were among the mourners, as also were the local Catholic clergy who had prayed for the family and had condemned the killing at all masses this morning. He was the 14th victim of the IRA's campaign against builders working for the security forces, and the congregation heard the Reverend David McGaughey say the IRA has no right to tell people what to do or who to deal with. Demanding tighter security, he appealed to the British government to take the shackles off the security forces. And though he didn't refer to extradition specifically, he appealed to the Irish government not to allow those who kill in Northern Ireland to go free south of the border.
We appeal to them today to put away hypocrisy and to act in a statesmanlike way. They say that they are against terrorism. We would say, let your deeds match your words.